So, what did you miss at Jubilee this week? Well, again, this video is a little bit jumpy as we don't yet have the proper software. I'm still on a loaner computer. But what did you miss today? Well, you missed fabulous baptism. Little Annabelle and little Sister Vienna were baptized today, and it was a celebration. It was a joy. We started by hearing from Paul's letter to the church in Rome and about the world of flesh and law and what it's like to live in Christ, to live in the Spirit. And when you cut through all the dramatic words, we realize that what Paul is offering is another way to live. Yes, you can live as if there is birth and death, and then in between the pursuit of happiness for yourself, security for yourself. Or you can see the world a different way and realize that it's not all about you, that we are all connected to one another, brothers and sisters, children of God together, part of creation. And when you live that way, you see the world in a new way. You begin to look beyond life and death. You begin to look beyond making yourself happy or satisfied. You recognize that we are in this together. And not only are we in it with each other, but we are also in it with God. So your vision becomes greater. That's what Paul is offering, inviting us into Christ, into seeing the world in a new way. And so in baptism today, that's what we did for Annabelle and Vienna. Invite them as they grow up to be young women, strong women. We invite them to see the world in a new way. Recognize that we are more than birth and death, that we are not alone. We are connected to each other. We are connected to God. And as a community, we promise to provide opportunity and resources, tools to help them grow and see the world connected, see themselves connected, ways to have hope and strength. And we also got to speak for God for a moment, to hold these little girls and say out loud, I love you. Because sometimes that's what we need most. As we move through this world, as we try to live in another way, we need to know that we are loved. Hearing it, knowing it gives us strength and courage and imagination. And then we went on to hear Matthew's gospel and the parable of the sower who cast his seeds. And some of it is on hard ground, and some of it's on receptive ground, and some of it's on ground that thorns grow up and strangle it. And then in Matthew's gospel, it explains the parable, explains who's who the Pharisees are, who God is in that parable. And, well, I felt compelled to reject that. It's not like me to reject Scripture so easily, but I felt it was necessary to reject it because life doesn't work that way. We rarely get things explained to us as they're happening. And that's not the way parables work either. I mean, if Jesus wants us to know something, Jesus has no trouble saying, turn the other cheek. Love your neighbor. Jesus has no trouble being direct, but Jesus chooses to teach in parables because, well, specifically because they're not direct. They are stories that we're meant to wonder and wander into. And the stories change every day. And as we hear the parable of the sower and the seeds, some days we imagine ourselves the sower tossing seeds out. Sometimes we imagine ourselves as the seed. Sometimes we can imagine ourselves as the soil. And so we heard the parable 3 or 4 times, and, well, I wondered out loud, and I hope that people in the congregation wondered in their own hearts, what's the parable saying to me today? Is it an invitation to be generously wasteful, throwing seeds even on soil that looks hard and unyielding? Are we invited to reach out to those that well, we wouldn't normally reach out to because we figure they don't really need our help, or they won't receive it, or perhaps they're lying to us. You know, like those people you see on the street all the time holding up signs saying, "I'm hungry, I just need bus fare to Nova Scotia." But 3 years later, you still see them there and you realize they're not going to Nova Scotia. They're lying about their need to go home. But they're not lying about their hunger. They're not lying about their desperation. And so maybe, even though we call that soil hard and unyielding, maybe we can throw some seeds that way too. Because you never know what's going to grow. You never know. Every now and again, we hold a hand, we say a word, we do something that we think of as being very small, only to discover years later it was profound. It was meaningful. For somebody, it made all the difference. It had opened their eyes to God's presence. That's one way of looking at part of the parable. But that's the point of parables, to keep looking again and again and discover something new. So that's what you missed with us today at Jubilee. The chance to play around with a parable, the chance to celebrate baptism, to invite two young girls who will one day be women, to see the world more than birth and death and getting stuff in between, but recognizing with awe and wonder that we are all connected, that we are all gloriously lovable, that we have work to do. We have love to share and lots of places in which to share it. Hopefully we don't miss you next week. You will miss these broadcasts for the next 2 weeks as I will be away, but we'll be back first thing in August. God bless.